Ashraf Renew from ashrafrenew.com. Today I will speak on build your spiritual codex. What I mean by build your spiritual codex is everything in the physical reality has a symbolic reference or a astral counterpart. Everything in the physical plane could be broken down to a shape or a form or a sacred geometrical figure or pattern. Once we can identify these sacred geometrical patterns, not just in the physical plane, but also in the astrals, so that we make a connection between the subjective reality and the objective reality, we are able to truly understand things from not only a microcosmic view, but also a macrocosmic view. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If we look at world events, right? I'm in America, so basically, in today's times, everyone is, speaking about the president, which I'm not going to name. Everybody knows who it is. We're just going to keep everything occult. However, once you identify the astrological symbol that the president represents, you can better understand everything that's happening essentially around the country when it comes to the laws and what will be passed in the laws and what will be changed, so on and so forth. Because we must understand that all of the astrological symbols are always in motion, right? The sun is always in motion all the way to Pluto. All of the planets are always in motion. And all of the points and the mini planets, the asteroids, we got more than the planets. This is a whole lot of activity going on, and there's a whole lot of aspects forming on a daily basis. So for someone who watches the stars, you can be able to decode all of these things going on once you can identify what is what. For example, again, the president, which I will not mention, is identified as the South Node or K2. So if we look at the American president, we can identify him as K2. Now, why do I say K2? For those who may not be familiar with the energy of K2, K2 is the opposite or the body of Rahu. Rahu is a demon that strived for immortality, which he accomplished, but only his head was able to be immortal, which left his body wandering around on its own. So K2 represents a body without a head. So you can only repeat what you know, which you have committed to memory. So basically, the body without a head can only perform the tasks in which were committed to memory. So the spiritual representation of this is why we need to commit the symbols to memory, whether it's the astrology symbols or whatever system, the runes, the tarot, whatever it is that you use to tap into the spiritual planes. This is why all of this information must be memorized, because once you have it memorized, you can take it to the astral plane or you can take it to the dream plane so that you can know and identify what you're looking at. So for example, many people have dreams of, let's just say, celebrities, right? So you may have a dream of, let's just say, a familiar face, whether it's a family member or a celebrity or someone you're familiar with. Now, we understand, of course, this is not the actual person communicating with you. This is a projection or a avatar of a symbolic archetypal figure. So, for example, let's just say, you see your father in your dreams, whether your father is living or dead. And you say, okay, well, my father is identified as Jupiter. So whenever I see my father, because of the patterns in which he represents, I need to look at the attributes or the motions or the configurations of Jupiter. Again, this would be the astrologer's mind. For someone who pulls tarot cards, okay, let me see what's going on with Jupiter. So you would do a reading or drawing cards based around the energies of Jupiter. Again, it all depends on what your spiritual system is. Once you have identified the pattern, you can see the motions and you can see the attributes and you can see the future possibilities of that pattern once you know what it is. For example, the previous American president, again, which I will not name, identified as Rahu. So remember, you have Rahu, you have K2, or you have the North Node and you have the South Node, right? So if you study the attributes of Rahu and the North Node, you can identify it with the former president. If you study the attributes of the South Node and K2, you can identify it with the current president, right? Because all of this is astrology planned out in real time. So once we understand what the symbolism is and we track the motions, again, whether we're doing it through astrology or numerology, or the tarot or the runes, again, whatever, all of these systems and all of these tools can be used to track. Again, for everybody doesn't have to be an astrologer or know astrological symbols. It just depends on what symbols speak the most to you, because there are symbols all over this planet. You got things like the I Ching, for those in the East. Their system is a I Ching. You have, Chinese astrology. You have many, many, many different systems that you can choose from, whichever makes the most sense to you. And I would say whatever gives you the best results, whatever is the most accurate, that's what you should go with. So whatever system you use and it gives you accurate results, you utilize that system. And the purpose of utilizing this system is to build up your spiritual codex. Because once you have identified what everything is on a symbolic level, you can then manipulate the energy from within. Remember, we have to connect the subjective reality with the objective reality. So in order to connect the subjective with the objective, we have to identify the pattern. So when we see the objective, we understand the objective. This is a projection of a pattern. This is a projection of an archetypal force, right? That is something greater than what we're looking at. So once we identify what that archetypal pattern is, or what that symbol represents, we can identify within ourselves, what does it mean for us? For example, again, if you are having dreams about a celebrity who is identified by Jupiter, and I'm just using Jupiter because Jupiter represents famous people, right? So the planet Jupiter represents famous people. So if you want to know what's going on with famous people, you would have to study the motions of Jupiter, or again, do a tarot or do a reading about the attributes of Jupiter, what's going on with the planet of Jupiter, because you would be able to see, okay, once you do that reading, you would be able to see these patterns playing out on the world stage. Right, so whether it's positive or negative, you're going to see somebody in a positive light or in a negative light, depending on how strong or how weak Jupiter is, right? So all this are just measurement tools, or tools of measurement, to identify what's going on the scales of reality, so that we can expand our conscious, or our dimensional conscious of the universe. So that way we could be aware of not just the macrocosm, but also the macro and the micro, right? So not only can we identify what's going on in our lives, we can identify what's going on the world stage. And not only can we identify what's going on the world stage, we can identify what's going on in the astral plane. Because again, everything that happens on the physical plane has an astral counterpart. So it happens in the astrals first. So those who are in tune with the astral plane can see things, before they happen, because it is already planned out on a higher plane. It just takes time to get into that higher plane, because again, we must build up our spiritual codex in order to get deeper into the astrals. In order to get deeper into the spiritual plane, we must be able to identify what the symbols represent. Because again, it's not English. We can't use English or whatever the common tongue is. If we're speaking about anything spiritual, it is not to utilize your common tongue. It is not to communicate with the common tongue. If anything, it should be through telekinesis. Or not telekinesis, telepathy, right? So let me not get it confused. Telepathy is like, moving objects. Well, no, telepathy is mind communication. And I'm getting the two mixed up. Telekinesis is moving objects, right, without physically touching them. That's telekinesis. And telepathy is mind communication. So in terms of the astral, it should be more of a telepathic communication. So it really shouldn't be based on English or whatever the common tongue is. Everything becomes more and more symbolic. So the deeper and deeper you get into your symbolism, the deeper and deeper you can get into the astral plane, because once you can identify what everything means, you can understand what possible message may be trying to get through to you. So for example, if you keep seeing the Star of David, right? So you, like, every time you dream, it's like you can identify, like, why do I keep seeing the Star of David, or why do I keep seeing the pentagram? Why do I keep seeing pyramids? Right? You will be able to identify that there are certain shapes and there are certain figures and certain geometrical patterns that you keep seeing on a continual basis. So once you can identify, okay, well, what is it? Obviously, that's trying to communicate something to me if I keep seeing it over and over again. So at that point, you have to identify, well, what is trying to be conveyed, because obviously, again, it's not going to tell me in English. It's not going to tell me in my common tongue. I have to decode the codex. So as we build up our spiritual codex, eventually we will be able to identify our entire astral pyramid, right? Because we all have an astral pyramid or a spiritual home. And this spiritual home is filled with symbolism. That's why when we study the pharaohs and all of the priests and all of the people that were buried in Egypt, they buried them with a lot of spiritual tools, right? So you can, somebody can be buried with, weed, tobacco, gold in their tombs. They had all these spiritual tools because this was a symbolic representation of their astral pyramid. And because they understood what all of these things represented, once they saw them, once they entered into the death stage. Like once you basically go through the veils of death, or once you go through the gateways of death, everything is purely symbolic, right? Again, there's no more English. It's like all symbolic. So if you understand your spiritual codex, you can guide your way to the afterlife, right? If you don't understand your spiritual codex, it's going to be very hard to navigate the astral plane, which is like driving streets. If you're driving down highways and you can identify which highway you're on, you have no idea where you're going. It's not until you have a map and you can understand what that map is speaking to you, because a map is it's all codes and symbols. It's all, numbers and the street names. It's all codes and symbols. Once you can identify where you are on that map, you can properly navigate yourself to your destination. But if you do not understand what highway you're on because you can't read the signs on the road and the traffic, you don't know what's going on, then it's hard to navigate. So most people have a hard time navigating the astral plane for this reason, because they don't understand the symbolism. Once you understand the symbolism, it becomes very easy to navigate. So again, if you wanted to go to Egypt in your dreams, most people can't go to Egypt. It's more than just putting an intention and now you're in Egypt. Everything is a pathway. Everything is a portal. You have to carve the pathways in order to enter into certain chambers, right? Like there's a certain chamber that we go into when we dream. Like for example, if you study your dreams, you're going to realize it may be a certain city, there may be a certain location that you're naturally drawn to because your spirit is attuned to that. However, if you want to expand your ability to tap into other dimensions, that are in reality or that predate reality. When I mean predate reality, I mean like Lemuria and Atlantis, the places that no longer exist, quote unquote. The subterranean planes. Again, all this is possible when we build up our spiritual codex so that we can identify the spiritual highways. If we can identify the spiritual highways, we can navigate ourselves to our destination properly, right? So that is the message of the day. Right, you guys see, I can't even speak without the inferno taking over, right? So let me give everybody a shout out and we get up out of here. So peace, Harmony 9. What's up, Dank Wizard? What's up, Back from Hiatus? What's up, X24? What's up, Young Sheba? And what's up, Miss Libra? Sorry about that. So you guys know what I'm saying. What's up, Joshua? Peace, peace. So unless anybody have any questions, we'll get up out of here. Again, we don't have to take up too much time. Just want to give you a quick example of how to expand yourself on the spiritual planes by identifying the patterns. Once you identify the patterns, you can navigate yourself to any place that you wish to go. But every place has a tunnel, or every place has a direct pathway that you must travel. Otherwise, anybody can do anything, right? The reason why anybody can't do anything is because you have to learn the map. Just like we have to learn the physical map or the world map, we have to learn the spiritual map. And again, all this, it just seems like extraordinary. It seems very spacey, is because it's supposed to appear that way. But that's why the ancients and all of our ancestors, they perfected these arts. And that's why we seem so detached from it. Like we were just so physically bound that the spirit plane don't even really make sense to us. But we spent most of our time in the spirit plane because we were able to get more work done. So when we see like the Hindu deities with multiple arms, that just means you're planted into the spirit plane. When you're planted into the spirit plane, it's as if you have 6, 8, 10 arms, because you can do a lot more than just with the 2 arms that we have in the physical body. So all of these things and all of these superpowers, if we look at comic book characters and all the superpowers they have, all of these things exist in the astral plane. So none of this stuff is made up. All of this stuff is real. Again, we're just looking at things from a physical point of view, which is the lowest dimension of reality. So as we transcend and navigate ourselves upwards or downwards, depending on the tree of life or the tree of death, whether you're going up or down, it's strictly your choice. You will be able to understand, like, okay, this is why it's called a tree of either life or death, meaning we have to establish the roots and we must travel into the branches, and all these things make more sense as we begin to navigate, right? So what's up, Raspberry Amber? And we'll check out. Salute, 93, 93.